All right, we'll hand these out just to. I don't know if we'll get to them, but we'll try. Okay, Erev Tov, good evening. Welcome, everybody. Just grateful to the good Lord for, getting beyond the challenges of Corona that we had to deal with 2 weeks ago. I thought maybe again we should dedicate our share learning for the Chayalim, certainly, and also Chatufi. I mean, it's really going on, and we just hope that we're getting to a point where, Yeshua Hashem Keherifyin, as it says, that in a flash of an eye, in a blink of an eye, the salvation comes about, and let's hope that's the case. This evening, what I'm going to do, I deliberated whether we should go through chapter 9, the story of Avimelech, and I decided we're not going through that. Just simply because it really is quite distressing. What happens is that Gidon is that come in. There you go. Hi, good evening. Hello, good evening. I don't know if we need more chairs. We've got there's 2 chairs by the table, so we Harry, you got a special seat. Kissi cover.
You warmed up.
You warmed the chair.
You'll get asked the questions.
Again, it's a chapter to read, chapter 9. The story of Avimelech, the son of the son of Gidon, really half brother to all the other sons of Gidon, and the fact that he tries to become a melech, his name Avimelech, and he tries to live down to his name, and of course it becomes a complete disaster. The reality is that the Jewish world is not ready for kingship. That only happens when we get to the end of the book of Judges and we move into the days of Shmuel, and you need a kingmaker. This is true. I always argue this in England where they have chief rabbis. I'm just reading a book about Lord Jacobitz, and he openly says, the guy who really supported him, a gentleman called Isaac Wilson, who was head of a very big company in England. I don't know who Rabbi Mervis's backer was, but he obviously had someone also of that ilk. There's always someone in the background, sort of someone, the monetary influence that brings about these cases of leadership. And it's just one of those situations that, again, in terms of kingship, the reality, till we get to the days of Shmuel, we're not really ready for kingship. Kingship is a failed attempt. Unfortunately, it doesn't really do much better when it's official. It lasts well for about 2 generations, David and Shlomo, and then after that, even Shlomo already not so great. But that's something that Hashem will talk about on another occasion. So, as I said, I don't want to dwell on the Avimelech story, just to tell you that, read this in your own time. It is a very difficult story because of what happened, the way he essentially has a civil war. It goes around Shechem, a battle that goes on. Again, all the details of chapter 9 I'm going to leave for the Tzibur to read for themselves. I always like to give homework. That's my teaching days are still with me a little bit. Chapter 10 is a very it sort of leads into chapter 11, which is what I want to do today. So Perek Yud really just ends the story of Avimelech. We go into a period seemingly of calm at the beginning, a few judges who we're told are successful in terms of what they do. But then, of course, trouble starts up again. This time it's the nation of Ammon, right? If you go around the Middle East, today we call it Jordan, and we call it Saudi Arabia, and we call it Egypt, we call all these sort of things. In the ancient world, we had enemies. They're just different names, same country, right? So Ammon is basically part of Jordan today, I think, or maybe a little bit north of Jordan. And these Ammonites, at the end of chapter 10, they start making trouble. And of course, at this point, the people in Eretz Israel are panicking, particularly on the other side of the Jordan. Remember, the community was divided between the the River Jordan sort of basically went through the middle of it. So you had 2.5 tribes on the east bank, as we would call it, and then everybody else on the west bank. Okay, to use that phraseology. And the 2.5 tribes on the east bank, they were always what's the word? They were prone to attack. They were open to attack, particularly from the north, from Aram, the Arameans, and you name it. Again, as I said, all these names just substitute for today. We're talking about Hezbollah. Once upon a time, they spoke about Aram. Unfortunately, the powers to the north don't leave us alone. So what we're going to do today, I want to do this because also it was last week's Haftarah. So I hope that those of you who listened to the Haftarah were able to read the Haftarah. The story is a wonderful story, very misunderstood. There's a gentleman by the name of Yiftach. Yiftach is a man who, as we will see, he comes into the position of judge, doesn't really want it, doesn't really feel he's worthy. A lot of question marks about him. The famous phrase everybody knows, Yiftach b'doro ke Shmuel b'doro, which rabbis say means that every generation has the leader it deserves. So the generation of Shmuel, tzaddikim, they were holy. They had a Shmuel. Leader of the generation of Yiftach, we always understand, not so holy. They had a Yiftach. So Yiftach is always given a little bit of a bad press. What we're going to try and do this evening, I want to give him a little bit of a better press, because I honestly believe this man was truly amazing, but at the same time, breathtaking in his ignorance. It really is breathtaking. Ignorance to the point where it affects the life of his daughter in a way which is just mind-boggling. The story of Yiftach is famous. What happens to the daughter? I hope you noticed when we read the Haftarah last week, it stops before the gory bit. It ends just when Yiftach makes his vow and end of Haftarah. And of course, if you go on another few verses, you realize it's not such a great ending, all right? Because the daughter, either she is killed or she's not killed. We'll see in a minute what happens to her. It's an unbelievable story. So what we'll do, Mitzvah Hashem, today is to deal with the story of Yiftach, listen to his speech for the United Nations, which I wish today, when I read this chapter, I think of Menachem Begin. I always remember that speech where Begin something happened where Germany made a critique of Israel. And boy, Begin, wow! That when he let loose, it gave you the shivers. When if you ever go to the Begin Museum over there, listen to some of his speeches. Unbelievable. The man was really, truly, truly amazing. So you listen to Yiftach, we'll hear maybe some of the echoes of Menachem Begin as well. And then at the end, obviously, if we have time, we'll try and deal with this very problematic vow that Yiftach makes, which just is beyond belief, as stories in Tanakh tend to be. Chapter 11. So we've got the Ammonites. That's really the introduction I wanted to make. So listen to this. Yiftach ha-Giladi. So he was from Gilad. Gilad is on the other side of the Jordan. As I said, exposed to the enemy. Usually, in fact, when the nations were conquered, the 10 tribes, the other side of the Jordan was the first area to be conquered. When you go to the end of the Book of Kings, you'll see what's going on there. So this was pretty difficult place to live. It was always on the border. And it says that Yiftach the Giladi, from Gilad, he was known as a very, you would say, a shtarka. He was a strong guy. He came from a woman who was a zonah, a harlot, or some say it was this guy Gilad, who was the father. It was his concubine. It was the Pilegesh, right, which they used to have in those days. They had an arrangement. You got married, chuppah kiddushin, which means the full Monty, as they would call it in England. In other words, you had the whole works, the shmorg and everything else for the American audience. And the reality is, if it was a pilegesh, then it was done just basically by living together, usually reserved for kings. But seemingly, the rabbis say this is what Gilad did. So he had a child called Yiftach by this woman Isha Zonah, by Yoled Gilad at Yiftach, and he gave birth to Yiftach. Fine. Now, what happened? And there was another wife. There's always other wives in the background, and there were lots of kids. Now these young men grew up. Yiftach was the outcast. He was kicked out of the house, which again doesn't speak very highly of the Ben Ad Chaver of that particular generation. Between man and man, terrible. They kicked him out because they said, we're writing you out of the will. You're not going to inherit, which is a whole story by itself. And we'll talk about that maybe in a few minutes, because it's very revealing that if this is to do with inheritance, why Yiftach feels so mitnaged, he feels so bad in terms of what's going to happen next. But let's stay with the story. So far, Yiftach, he's the child outside of the family to the way he's treated, and he's kicked out. So what does he do? He runs away. He lives in the land of Tov. I wish I knew where that is, but we're told it's a good place. And unfortunately, he gathers together some empty gentlemen, right? People who we would call, I always reminded of the Robin Hood story for those who are more of English background. You know, the merry men. All of them are misfits, right? And they all come to him, and they go around with it. David HaMelech had the same interesting experience, right? He also had a bunch of people that attached themselves to him. So this seems to have been maybe something of the Middle East of those days. I don't know, sort of these situations. But what happened? Dalet. In the meantime, there's a war going on, right? And as we go through this chapter, the shadow of war is never far away, and this is why learning Tanakh is so important. It gives us a little bit of a chizuk, just to realize that unfortunately this seems to be our situation from time to time. Let's hope not for much longer in this case, where we are now. Pasuk Hey, so they had this fight. So they went to Eretz Tov, a delegation to try and bring Yiftach back, right? Because he's recognized as being the strongest man of the generation. Now, again, obviously, what they want is a military leader. Our definition of a shofet, the judges, is the military and a spiritual leader, right? So the question will always be, what sort of spiritual leader Yiftach really wants? And we're going to come to that by the end of the chapter. So listen to this. So the delegation comes to Yiftach, and they say, you'll be a katzin, like in the word we use today, katzin, an officer. You'll be the head of the army. You'll lead the army against Bnei Ammon, the Ammonites, who are the new enemy. Now, Yiftach has a rejoinder. He has a response. Hello, atem snei demoti. You hate me. Not wow. This is very direct. There's no beating around the bush here. But to Garshuni mi Beit Avi. Now he's blaming the elders for him being thrown out of the house. Right. So the Briskerov, very interestingly, Ravel Soloveitchik, the uncle of Rabbi Soloveitchik from Yeshiva University, he explains this, and he says what happened was that Yiftach was thrown out of the house, not just because of his mother, but essentially because of his father as well. He is considered, this is the suggestion of Rabbi Soloveitchik, that Yiftach was considered to be what is called in the Gemara a Sufi. A Sufi means a complete orphan from both sides. No parental connection whatsoever that is to be recognized. And Rav Soloveitchik argues that Yiftach, because of the inheritance situation, that he has been rejected from both his father's side and his mother's and his father's side, he now, of course, is lacking what they call yichus. He doesn't have any real sort of background to come along and say he deserves to be the leader. So on this basis, Yiftach is actually saying to the elders, I was thrown out of the home. Why now are you coming when you're in trouble? In other words, I'm not the guy. I don't have the yichus. I'm not the man. You need someone who is going to be miyuchas, someone who deserves to lead. You've had Otniel, and you've had Devora, and you've had all these incredible people, Gidon, and all of a sudden you're coming to me. And Zeloba said it. He said, I'm not the person. So the reason why Rabbi Soloveitchik says this is because it seems that Yiftach seems to be a bit, what's the word? He's sort of looking for a nekama. He's looking for a kind of revenge against what was done to him. But he says, no, maybe not so much. Not quite a revenge, but just a reflection of the situation. Yiftach is saying, I'm not the person. I don't have the qualification that you're looking for. You need a king, or you need not a king, but you need a judge, you need a leader. It's got to be someone who is recognized by the tzibur, and I have all of these negative background situations. So look what happens. They said, wait a minute, we need you. Zignei Gilad al Yiftach, they said to Yiftach, on the contrary, this is why we come back to you. We need you because you're the strongest man in the country, right? You think of all the leaders. I mean, oh gosh, in modern Israeli history, I mean, so many people fit this particular definition. I always think of Ariel Sharon, all right, who wasn't so great in terms of his stint as a prime minister, but in terms of the Yom Kippur War, the stories about him are truly unbelievable. Many people like this, many people, and still today. So we need you. And that's always the lesson, and where they always fail. Oh, it's totally. This is why the people learned Tanakh once upon a time. The Israeli leadership. I think it started with Ben Gurion, but certainly Begin had a shiur every Motzei Shabbat in the home. Yehuda Avner writes about it, and they had people coming to learn Tanakh. So you had Nechama Leibowitz, and you had Moshe Tzvi Segal, and you had all of these incredible people sitting around learning Tanakh with the prime minister. I mean, it's mind blowing. It really is, and they learned it. They didn't just read it; they took it to heart. They saw this as a hadracha. This was a guidebook for them. Unbelievable. There's great stories about that. Anyway, so we're having this battle, and Yiftach, we need you. And you will be able to unite all these people in Gilad. You're going to bring everybody together. So what did Yiftach do? He's got no choice. This is already a sign. Yiftach is a Yirei Shamayim. He's definitely God-fearing. He's mentioning the name of God. And it's not something which is foreign to. As I said, the press on Yiftach was always a bit dubious, right? A bit negative. But the reality is the Mefarshim point out, he really does fear God. And he says, Anochi Elechem Larosh, and then I accept the job, I will be the head. Listen to that, unbelievable. Vayomer Pasuk Yud. It's one of my favorite chapters. This Vayomer Zignei Gilad al Yiftach. So they said to him, to Yiftach, Hashem yesh shomea beinotenu. You mentioned God. Let's do a l'chaim. Let's sort of drink on this or whatever they would do. God will be our witness. Im lo kidavarcha keina said that we will do as you, if not according to your words, so we will do. In other words, we will follow what you've said. We will accept you. Everything you want, we will comply. Listen to what he does. V'yelech Yiftach im ziknei Gilad v'yasima am oto aleim l'rosh. Katzin, he got immediate acceptance by the nation. He even had a gathering in a place called Mitzpah. And Rashi says, Mitzpah, Mokom shenesu kulam, everybody came together. Fantastic unity going on here. Yiftach is not a lightweight in this case. And Rashi says, Shechina shora arov tzibur. When you've got a tzibur like that, you've got the Shechina there as well. Amazing. So Yiftach really sort of, rises to the occasion. So far, so good. Now here comes my favorite part of the chapter, the high end of the chapter. Pasuk Yud Bet. I can see there's a little amusement going on here. Vayishlach Yiftach malachim el melech b'nei Amon le'mo. So Yiftach decides, as Mr. Churchill used to say, jaw, and then war, right? Firstly, you have a chat, you have a discussion, you have a talk, jaw, and then war. If they're not going to listen, then you've got to go to war. Unfortunately, at the moment, there's a bit too much jaw going on. In the north, it's I don't know what's going to be up there, but let's hope for the best. It's certainly better than war. That was Churchill's line, but you get to a point. I mean, how much more can you talk to people who are shooting rockets at you? I don't know. Anyway, that's just the way what we're dealing with at the moment. So listen to this. Pasuk Yud Bet. And it's such a great story. If you don't know the story, it's fabulous. He sends a delegation to the king of Bnei Ammon to say, Mali valach ki bata elai lechabad. What are you doing over here? You're having a war with us? What do you want? Why are you here? And it's all done through a third party. It goes back to the messengers of Yiftach. Wow. Talk about the echoes of history, right? You stole the land. This is our land, Palestine, right? It's not Israel. And it's ours. And you listen to that narrative, it can drive you to despair. How incredibly wrong the whole narrative is. But just I don't even want to go there, but I'm sure we all know, we've all sort of heard it. So he said, and the king of Ammon said, you took our land. When you came out from Egypt, Me Arnon ad Yabok, he went from Arnon to Yabok, ad Yarden to the Jordan. V'ata shivetem b'shalom, give it back, and we're going to go away. Just hand back half the country, and goodbye. Yiftach says, I'm sorry, guys, you've got the narrative completely wrong. But Yosef od Yiftach probably couldn't believe what they were saying. But Yishlach malachim melech b'nei Ammon, and he sends a response. And wow, as I said, I can hear Menachem Begin talking here. Vayomer lo. So what's Yiftach's response? Ko amar Yiftach, this is in the name of Yiftach. Lo lakach Yisrael et Eretz Moab. What are you talking about? We didn't take the land of Moab. Eretz b'nei Ammon, or the land of the Ammonites. This is all the parsha that we're reading at the moment in Kriyat HaTorah, Parsha Balak, what we read last week. Look up. Ki ba'alotam. Now he's going to give him a history lesson. And again, this is what Begin would have done. You want to hear Jewish history? Here we go. Ba'alotam Mitzrayim. We came out from Egypt. Vayelech Yisrael b'midbar Yamsuf. Yeah, we went to the Yamsuf, went to the Red Sea. Vayavo Kadesh. We came to Kadesh. Vayishlach Yisrael Malachim. At that point, we wanted to go through the land of this land that you're saying belongs to you. We made an appeal to be able to be allowed to go through it. We weren't going to do anything. We just wanted to access it on our way to Israel. And he says, we sent messengers from Melech Edom, to the king of Edom, to say, Ebrano Batzecha, let us through. Lo Shama Melech Edom. He wasn't interested. V'gama Melech Moab, Shalach v'lo Avai. He didn't want to know either, the king of Moab. All the stories that we're reading at the moment. V'yeshev Yisrael b'Kadesh, and he was stuck in Kadesh. And that was the story. V'yelech b'midbar v'yasav et Eretz Edom. So we had to go around the land of Edom, at Eretz Moab, and the land of Moab. So we had to go in the whole detour basically. We stayed there. We never came near the land of Moab. In other words, you're telling me that we took this by force. The story is not quite the way you've presented it. And Yuted, Vayishlach Yisrael Malachim, we sent more messengers, El Sichon Melech Emori, Melech Heshbon, the king of Heshbon. Vayom Elo Yisrael, we said, Na'brano ba'artzad mekom. It's so impressive. He knows his Bible, this man. He really knows the story. And it says, Pasuk Chav, V'lo emin Sichon et Yisrael avo bigvulo. Still we weren't allowed to go through. V'yesov Sichon et Golamah. Not only that, Sichon started a war. He started the war, not that we started the war. Right? They on October 7th, they attacked us, and the world needs to remember that. It's just unbelievable how that gets forgotten. It's truly mind-blowing. And again, this is not a new story. It's been around for a long time. You started the war, and Sichon gathered his people. You started the war with us. We won. You lost. Bad luck. Sorry guys, that's the way it is. But Yerash Yisrael et Kol Eretz Amori, as a result, the spoils of war, we had the land of the Amorites. Yoshev Aretz Ahi, who dwelt in that land. By Yershu Pasuk Kafbet. By Yershu, I'm putting this. Listen to this speech. Listen to his defense of Jewish history. It's amazing. By Yershu et Kol Gvul Amorim, Arnon ad Yabok. He went from these two places, Min Amidbar, the Yarden, and went right through to the River Jordan. He gave a whole history lesson to the king of Ammon. And now Hashem Elokei Yisrael, the name of God, Horishet Emori b'nei Amo Yisrael. You guys were driven out before the Bnei Yisrael. V'ata tirashenu, and now you want it back. We won it. Our God was with us. You guys started. You lost, and now you come along and say, well, give it all back and everything will be fine, from the river to the sea, right? I mean, it's scary. It's every time you read Tanakh, it's here. Frightening. Pasuk Kaf Dalet. Halo etashe yorishcha kama, and this is where Yiftach gets a little bit cheeky. He says, look, you've got your gods, and we've got Hashem. So your God will work for you, and Hashem will work for us. I mean, it's a little bit of a chutzpah here, and there's a whole discussion whether he should have mentioned the name of the God of the enemy. There's always this question about how you pronounce the God of the Christian. Do you call him JC, or whatever you call him, Yoshki, or whatever words you use. All my from friends don't like to use the name, but it never bothered me. I don't know why. But it's just one of those strange things. Sorry?
I say Hoish.
Oh, so ish. Yeah, that's a good euphemism. I like that one. All right, whatever. Pasuk Kaf Dalet. Hello, Eitoshe Yorishcha Kamo Shelohecha So what your God Kamosh, this Kamosh was really not a very nice avodah zarah. It really was very unpleasant. It was a bit like the Molech. They used to do child sacrifice and God knows what. Terrible. So Yiftach says, what your God will give to you is yours. What our God gives to us will be for us. Fabulous drasha. And he's standing there really. Every sentence is becoming more and more animated. This week's parasha, Balak. Are you better than Balak, Melech Moav, Harov, Ravim Yisrael? He started a whole complaint. He got Bilam to try and do the business in the Chambam, and did we even sort of get to the point to fight him? You know the history. The reality was that in the end, didn't even have to have a war because God was on our side. And look what happened with Bilam and this whole crazy story that we read about this week. Pasuk Kava, he's almost at the end of his drasha, and boy, he is giving this guy a speech and a half. Kava, b'shevet Yisrael b'cheshbon b'notel. While we were living in this place called Cheshbon, Aroeh b'notel, the names that we'll read them this week. B'chol harim asher yidei Arnon, shalosh meyot shana. We've been here for 300 years. 300 years, and the Rashi works out the chronology here. I'm not going to go through it. Long Rashi. We've been here forever, and you come along and say, well, you've been. I don't know the claim. This is I've got to get off my chest. Those pictures from the 19th century. Robinson who did all these? The Scottish guy that all the paintings, the famous books of Jerusalem. Every picture of the Har HaBayit, you don't even see one person standing there, not one person. And you notice that when they ever did their tefillah, right? In fact, they're not facing towards the Har HaBayit; they're facing away. And what's facing towards the Har HaBayit, unfortunately, is the other end of their anatomy. They did this on purpose. They really do not respect the Har HaBayit. All of a sudden, everywhere you go, they've been saying in Gaza, they go into every home, they find a mural of the Har HaBayit. It's become their I don't know what the word is. Their symbol. It's just unbelievable how these things can get abused and misused. And we know the truth. We really know what their attitude was. That Jerusalem was never on their their top 10. Was it not? No, top 2, right? It was number 3 on their list. And this is what's so frustrating today. And we need a Yiftach to come along and lay it on the line, right? And he says that we've been here 300 years. Why didn't you do anything about it for the last 300 years? What are you doing? I love the word madua, by the way, because madua is in Hebrew. You have lama, which is you sort of use one hand, and then madua is when you throw your hands up and your shoulders, and it's a very much more animated way of saying why. Madua, very strong word, and we've used the word madua here a number of times. Madua, why? Really, in your face, alapanim. Lo itzaltem beitahi. Why have you not done anything about it for 300 years? Wow. And listen, I haven't done anything against you. You're now doing so evil things. May our God judge. May God judge between us. Wow. The the ultimate response. And you ever look at the pictures of the debates in the United Nations? This is just the same story. V'lo shoma melech b'nei Amon. They're not listening, right? It must be the most difficult job in the world to be the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. You give these amazing speeches with amazing revelation, and they're not listening because they've already got their mind is made up, and they're not listening. And even the ones you hope are listening are not really listening. And this is again an echo from history. V'lo shama melech b'nei Amon. He just wasn't listening. El divrei Yiftach asher shalach elo. After all that drasha and that incredible history lesson, not interested. Lo shama. Doesn't want to know. So of course, Georgia is finished. We're on to World War. Pasuk Kaftet. But Yiftach ruach Hashem. At this point, Yiftach gets a spirit of God. Ruach gevura, says the Targum, a spirit of strength. He's being elevated the whole time. Ruach Hashem, V'yavad Gilad Vet Menashe. He goes through Gilad and Menashe. He's from the tribe of Menashe, Yiftach. And one of the big issues that's going to be in the next chapter is that he doesn't invite the cousin. his cousin Ephraim is left out, and Ephraim doesn't like this. If you know the story, it's what I used to call Lithuanian story, and the reason why it's Lithuanian is because Lithuanians cannot say Shabbos. Good Lithuanians cannot pronounce a shin; they pronounce it as a sin. Right? Those who come from Lithuanian background, you may know this, that they would always say good Sabbath, right? And my Rosh Yeshiva was like that, Rabbi in Gateshead. He could never say a shin. We always cracked up. He once gave a shir about a sota, which is an adulterous woman who was going crazy. And in Hebrew, to go crazy, the word is shota. So he was talking about a shota became a shota. And by the time we finished, if you get the point, you get the joke, it really was ridiculous. The whole place was just on the floor laughing. That's Lithuanians. They're like that. That's their pronunciation. But there's a precedent. The people of Ephraim cannot pronounce a shin and a sin. They got it mixed up. So you'll see in the next chapter what happened, and it's not a nice story. As I said, this is the high point of Yiftach and the way that he galvanizes the people, and he gives his speech against the Ammon, and he tells them, the emes la'amisa, he tells them what's really going on. Unfortunately, things from here are, the war's going to be good, but the aftermath of the war, not so good. So let's see what happened here. Pasuk Lamed. Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Didn't Yiftach say to his half brothers that before I accept the your challenge of being the leader,
Yeah.
if I take the leadership, you can't throw me out again. I'm good for
It's
the war,
possible.
but then
His
I'm out.
inheritance.
I'm
Inheritance.
out. After you use
Doesn't
me
say
for the
that.
war.
Yeah. It again not clearly stated in the text, but there is this interaction with the rest of his family, which is in the background. It's certainly in the background, right? Whether it's to that extent, the answer is I haven't looked at that side of things, and there's probably midrashic text that sort of.
I thought it was actually.
I don't think it's in here. The reality was that he was thrown out, and he seems to have initially, said, "I don't want to have anything to do with this enterprise because you threw me out. You sidelined me." But as I explained, a lot of it is to do with inheritance and the way that he was not considered a man of yichus, and he felt that he wasn't fit for the position. So the way Reb Soloveitchik explained it is that he turns him from being a bit vindictive into someone who is actually quite modest. But is Yiftach going to be, are we going to be able to justify his modesty now? I'm not sure, right? I've put it out there because it's something to think about. But listen to this. Now here comes the bombshell, Pasuk Lamed. Vayida Yiftach Neder Lashem. Now he's going to make a vow. And this is what drives everybody crazy. It's a great book, Naomi Reagan, Jephthah's Vow, right? Is that the book? I think it was. Jephthah's daughter. It's called Jephthah's daughter, but it was an interesting book. Again, interesting character she is as well. I'm sure some of you know her. Vayida Yiftach Neder Lashem Vayomar. So he made a vow. Im nason titein et bnei Ammon biyodi. If I'm going to win, the following is going to be my contribution to my religious reaction, as it were, to the victory. This is unbelievable. Whoever comes out of the house, whatever comes out of the house first when I come back from the war and comes out to greet me, when I come back in peace from beating these Ammonites, and I will offer it up as a sacrifice. So you immediately say, what happens if a dog comes out of the house? What happens if an animal which is obviously not kosher? This whole Neder, this whole vow is really, it's not allowed. So there's a whole big discussion on one about the vow, and even more to the point, if the vow was made in error, then there's got to be what is called nullified, heter Neder. You can actually nullify it, and that doesn't happen. And this is a tragedy what happens. It's unbelievable. Lamed bet. Yiftach el bnei Ammon. In the meantime, let's get the war over with. It's almost as if that's kind of irrelevant now, because he's going to win. We know he's going to win. And Elohim Bam, he goes to fight, and he wins through God. They took over 20 more cities of the enemy. All these different names of places. Boy, Shmais, it was unbelievable. And they were subdued the enemy. And I don't think they even came back for round two. Don't really hear much about them anymore. Not until we come to our generation. He's coming home. Everything is incredible. A big parade. And the first person in this case to come out of the house was his daughter, with drums and dancing and whatever. And there was no children. In other words, she had not been married. She didn't have children. There was no grandchildren, or some say didn't have any other children. Not clear exactly whether there were other children, but certainly this girl was single and had come out of the house, and Yiftach is stopped in his tracks. He saw her. He did Korea. He tore his like a person in mourning, because to him his promise to offer a sacrifice was absolute. So here he is. He knows the history of the Jewish people. He knows what happened with Ammon and Moab and the whole history, and yet the Akedah he doesn't seem to be too clued in on. Right? We don't do human sacrifice, and you'll see what happens. It's shocking. And the pasuk lamed hey, he starts accusing her. You brought me down, my daughter. You're going to be the trouble for me. I open my mouth to God. I can't go back. As far as Yiftach is concerned, he made a promise. He's got to fulfill it, and he's got to bring a sacrifice. And his daughter has come out of the house. He's going to do human sacrifice. Really? Look what she said, and her acceptance is amazing. Pasuk lamed vav, Atomer elav avi patzita et picha l'Hashem. You open your mouth to God. Asei li kasher yatsa mipicha. You do what you promised. Wow. Acharei she'asa lecha Hashem nekamot be'yevech b'ne'eman. You had such a victory. You made the promise. You got to do it. It's shocking, and her acceptance of this is truly shocking. There's a little bit of a rabbinic interpretation here. We're told that she asked for one favor. Leave me alone for 2 months. I will go down on the mountain. So the rabbis say, wait a minute, every time I go up a mountain, it's usually up a mountain, it's not down the mountain. So they say what harim is a euphemism for the rabbis, the Sanhedrin. She is going to do a rabbinic tour of all the different leaders of the community, and she's going to obviously try and find a way of getting rid of this vow. And the worst case scenario, I will remain a virgin, she says, I will mourn, I will weep with my friends, and that's going to be my lot. Of course, the trouble is that he's promised to make a sacrifice, and the Mefarshim, it's shocking. Two famous Mefarshim, Ibn Ezra and Ramban. And Ibn Ezra says, I can't believe that he would ever kill her. It's not possible. Right? No, this we're talking about a leader of the Jewish people. Says the Ramban, I'm sorry, Ibn Ezra, but you're wrong. He's promised to do a sacrifice, and according to various midrashic texts, that's exactly what he did. He killed her. And they made a memorial to her, and they used to go and visit the memorial, and that was the story. It's pretty shocking. It's beyond shocking. It's as I said, there's such a high for Yiftach, and he comes down with such a bump. It's frightening, and it gets worse in the next chapter, as you'll see. Lamed Chet, but let's see what happens here. Vayomer lechi, so he said, go, my daughter. Vayishach ota shnei chadashim, for 2 months. She did her rabbinic tour, her tour of the rabbis. Vatelechi v'reotel v'teiv chal b'tula l'arim, and they were crying. They realized that even if she's not killed, but she's going to live a life of seclusion, that was a terrible fate for her. What happened? She came back. And of course, this is the biggest question mark here, what it means. He fulfilled his vow. And Ramban says he fulfilled his vow, he killed her. He actually killed her, and it's a terrible thing. The Hilo Yadaish, and she was not known to man, but she was not married. But to he Chok B'Yisrael, this became like a byword in Israel, became known. This is what happened to the daughter of Yiftach. And Yiftach, as I said, in the end, the press that he gets is not good. But I'm not prepared to say he was bad from day one, which seems to be the case. On the contrary, no. This was a man who had tremendous connection to God, but also had a tremendous, lack of knowledge. The rabbis say he was an amazing Amorit, right? And the scary part is what we're going to say right at the end. I don't know how we're doing for time. Oh, another 5 minutes.
Say that he didn't kill her because
The Ibn Ezra said, how could he kill her?
how do they say
Yeah, that's what. So what says it's possible?
All hinges on the vav.
It's the vav, right?
An and or an or.
Or correct. And if he didn't kill her, possibly the last verse. She was in this wherever it was place of seclusion, and her friends used to come and weep with her Abba Yamim Shana for 4 days in the year. Nebuch. And that was the story. It's mind blowing. And the question, of course, is asked why Yiftach in the end was punished like this. So the rabbis say, just look at the next two verses, chapter 12, Yitzhak, Ephraim, the Avot Sophono, the men of Ephraim were very upset. Yiftach Madua, again the word Madua, why did you go to war? You didn't call us. We were waiting for the call. You never called us. They started threatening him. We're going to burn down your house. And Yiftach got into a whole fight with these are the cousins. This is Ephraim and Asher. This is the other half of the duo. And he gets into a fight with them. And the shocking thing is, it says, if I'm not mistaken here, how many of them were eventually killed. It says that they killed 42,000 members of the tribe of Ephraim. That is shocking. So Yiftach, from a glorious beginning, maybe not so glorious, but in terms of the way he stood up for Am Yisrael, and of course he wins the war, he gets to the point where he is responsible for the death of 42,000 Jews. Truly, it's again, this is the ups and downs of the period of the judges. It really is shocking. I want to just work with this page just for 2 minutes, if you have it, just to talk a little bit. Let's put it this way. The question of this vow, why this vow cannot be annulled, right? And the rabbis are very quick to say Yiftach was an Amaretz. He could have annulled it. If he'd only known what to do, there's a whole discussion of it, which I can't go through now, which is about what type of vow it was. It's called Cherem Lashem. It's a special type of vow, which is a dedication to God, but it can be annulled. All these vows can be annulled, right? We do our Taras Nedarim, for goodness sake. We do, we know what to do. We do it before Rosh Hashanah every year. So the reality of it is that the section I just want to read to you here is from on the left-hand side, about halfway down. And it says, okay, if Yiftach didn't know about this law of annulment, you got Pinchas. Pinchas is still around. Pinchas is around through the days of Shmuel. Pinchas was at Matan Torah. He knows what to do. And Pinchas over here doesn't get up and say, I've got to come and put this right. I know that Yiftach has made a promise which is going to involve potentially killing his daughter. I can't let this happen. But Pinchas doesn't say a word. And this is what is so shocking. And this is the bit I just want to read to you because we're running out of time. Al Pinchas, and it's again halfway down on the left-hand side. Al Pinchas lo kibu chazal shnidam min halacha. With Pinchas, it seems that he did know what to do, right? He wasn't unaware of this law. Hu yoda utal boria. He knew it very well. He got it from God, essentially. He was at Mount Sinai. L'chein lo ala adalto klal. Firstly, Pinchas could not believe. Sherosh Sanhedrin v'chol dainei Sanhedrin lo yoda. It seems to be none of the rabbis knew what to do. They were in a quandary. They didn't know how to annul the vow. Barur haya lo shebashum ofen lo yikayem yiftach et nidro kravat bito. So Pinchas was convinced. How in the world could Yiftach ever carry this out to kill his daughter? Ki areya neder lo chal klal. As far as Pinchas was concerned, no vow whatsoever.
What was going to halacha?
It's something which, by definition, is it can't happen. Certainly not to go and kill her. And there would, in other words, there should be an annulment. Everything about this that it would stand is wrong. And Pinchas was so assured that nobody could make such a fundamental error, he didn't even want to get involved. And that's the problem. And sometimes you've got to get involved. If you're the rabbinic leader, you've got to be there. You've got to say something. And he says, Ki arei neder lo chal klal. He didn't think you needed to be matir, to have an allowance of the vow. He knew clearly. You can't make a an offering of a human being. Whoever you are, this is not the Jewish way. And he never thought in his mind, the next paragraph is the kicker. So Pinchas says, why should I bother to go to Yiftach? He can't be that ignorant, surely. I know Yiftach is not coming to me for whatever reason, but Pinchas says to himself, why should I bother to go to him? Why should I even send messages? He can't be someone of such ignorance. And the last section over here, I just want to read to you. Gedolei Olam, this is a takeaway message here. Nitfasim gam al netiyat dakot ele. It seems to be that he had a bit of a bias, Pinchas. He couldn't believe that someone like Yiftach, who was running the show, could be so ignorant. Ki ein sof lechovat ha'amel letikun yishoa midot. A person's got to try and improve his character. And he couldn't believe that Yiftach would not be part of that process. So this is again Rabbi Levi, who I mentioned a number of times, a teacher who was teaching Yerushalayim. He writes this, and he says that this was so the sad outcome of the whole story. That if you are in a position, it's the old assumption. You assume. When you assume, we know what it does. It makes for you and me the consequence. And Pinchas over here assume. It's shocking. And as we said, according to the Ramban, there was a korban. It's the most frightening thing in the world. And that Yiftach went ahead and did it. What I think we have to say, maybe I'm always more inclined, when I was teaching this, I was always inclined to go with Ibn Ezra, because to consider that Yiftach would have done this is so shocking and so frightening. I'm not sure what to say, but certainly, whatever one wants to say about this story, it's a high, it's an incredible story, and it's so bad at the end. And as I showed you at the beginning of chapter 12, which Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully in 2 weeks' time, we're good. We'll see Perek Yud Bet. It really is truly unbelievable. What does it say? Me Rama. What is it? There's an expression in the Gemara. From a high level, you go down into the pit. And Yiftach is one of those characters that, we really, I don't know. I'm not sure whether we're going to give him I was speaking today about report cards. I tried to give a report card for Achav this morning. I gave him a D-, and I said in the comments you'll be able to potential, but didn't really live up to it. What is my report card for Yiftach? I don't know. I can't give him an A because this is not in the end living according to the A standard. But I can't give him a D because he won the war. I'm gonna have to give him probably a B-. I don't know. I think I'm sort of you're not with me.
Generous.
I'm being generous. I was always told I was an easy marker in Ghana. That was my reputation. So that was it.
If he brings her as a carbon, then you can't give him anything higher than very low grade.
Very low.
If all he did, he said, okay, you're going to, Allah Hashem, you've now been set aside to Hashem, you got to live without getting married, even though, again, that's also not the Jewish way.
Correct. But
on the other hand, it's nowhere near as disastrous as the other, and that's correct. And it's interesting because the Navi never says he brings it as a carbon.
No, and it just says he fulfilled the Neder, whatever that means.
That's the point. Is I think to say that's why I always found Rabban challenging.
It is very challenging. He's translated it here in the English. He's actually translating to English.
Radak and I think Barbanel also on the other side of the divide. It says he didn't bring her as a carbon because that ignorant he wasn't. Yeah. That to know that he couldn't do, or either he didn't know he could do it or didn't want to do it because he felt this was really a valid neder.
A vow which could not be broken. It was a king, Keilu, a king, had made a vow, and that was it. Scary, absolutely scary.
If it's against halacha, then you can't. Can you make a neder against halacha?
That's this. If you take this home, you'll be able to find all of the information because it's all there. Meaning that there's a halachic debate about this because it's a special type of vow. Can it be broken? Can it not be broken? I don't want to go into it. I don't have the time, but it's also very technical halachic discussion. But that's all on the page. So, as they say in yeshiva, ayin shal.
Could this be a representative of state of Shoftim at this point? We're now halfway through the book.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And the Israelites have been living there for let's say half the time, 100
300 years.
years.
300 years. He said 300 years. It's a long time.
Well, if they were there 300 years, they're only the whole thing is 360.
Correct. So we're getting towards really the end of it.
I'm not sure the timing is.
Yeah, the
right,
chronology is a little bit
but
challenging.
it still shows maybe the mentality. He's living in this Canaanite country, and he's maybe taking on any kind of sacrifice.
Yeah.
He knew an animal wasn't going to come out of his front door.
Yeah.
It would come out of the barn or the whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but
it
still,
was still a person that.
what a risk! What a risk! It was not necessary to take
No,
a risk.
wasn't.
Take a risk like that.
No,
It's so
it was
shocking.
foolish.
It's a shocking story. I just got to share one anecdote. My daughter had a teacher in school in London, Hasmonean, for those of you who know London schools, and we had a PTA meeting, and I said, I'm teaching Bible. I was teaching in another school. So the teacher said, what are you teaching? So I said, I'm going to be teaching Shimshon. And the look of horror on this teacher's face, all of Shimshon? I said, you remember that story? My wife's laughing. Everything about Shimshon, the whole unexpurgated version. And that, Mitzvah Shem, is the thing to look forward to. Shimshon, wow, what a character he is. Brings up the end of the period of Judges, at least with a little bit of a chizuk. But Samson and Delilah, one of my favorite movies of all time. Go back about 100 years and you remember the movie. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Have a good evening. Thank you.